Good morning, everyone. Yes, I know it's been a long time since I've been in this setup here. Like I say, as you know, I've been traveling, and it's been kind of good to be away, actually. Posting only occasionally when I felt like there was something that I really needed to say. However, as I said in the live stream that I did the other day called The Degeneracy of the U.S. Part 1, I said that I was going to do a part 2. And this won't be all inclusive by any means. There's just no way to cover everything. So it's going to be pretty much in general terms. In case you don't know, I'm Roy Potter, and this is the Potter Expositor. As you all come in, the chat should be on. Let me double check. I want to say hello to you all as you come in. And I know it's been quite a while since we've been up. I think, let me check on something here if I can. Yeah, I still am not sure how to do that, so I'm going to have to talk to somebody. But at any rate, the chat is on for those of you who would like to partake. I'm going to have a few moderators, but I'm going to have to discuss with them how to proceed if if I keep doing this, which is an issue in and of itself at this point. But at any rate, I do see a need for it at this point. I've had to knock some people off the channel because of their, when you make accusations without evidence, it just gets kind of tiresome, and I just won't put up with that anymore, or name calling or those types of things. All right, so what made me decide to do this? Well, I couldn't decide whether to do it before the State of the Union or after, and then I realized, well, I could do one before, and that would not preclude me doing one, tomorrow or the next day or whatever. So, due to the circumstances of things as it sits right now and what I've heard the State of the Union is going to address, what President Trump is going to address, I decided that I needed to make some preemptive comments. Now, I listened to Lionel this morning, Lionel Nation, and he was calling upon the president to do a whole list of things, all of which I agree with. However, on the realistic side, I realize that many of those things won't happen. So let me dive in this. You'll notice in the description box below, I've quoted a few scripture. I'm not going to preach during this, although I am going to give my philosophical, political approach to what's happening. But you'll see those two quotes. And the one is, they have not rejected me, they have rejected you. In other words, when somebody is out there trying to tell the people as a whole what is right and what is wrong, what's righteous, what's unrighteous, etc., and that they have to repent, if we take it personally, that's not a good thing. If this is from the spiritual side, which usually it is in that situation, then they reject it. What they are actually doing is rejecting God or the universe, or however you want to look at it. I prefer God, but I give people a lot of leeway on that, as you know, for a lot of reasons. The other scripture that's important is where it says, "Come out of her, that ye partake not of her sins." The question is, how do we come out now? How do we escape? Because the evil controls just about every square foot on this planet now, in one way or another. The good has allowed that to happen. We have been asleep. We have not been watchmen. We have not aggressively stood for the truth. And truth is absolute. There are some absolutes in truth, despite what the philosophers in the colleges and the universities and even other places will tell you. There are. And the basic one, the most basic, is that you treat others as you want to be treated yourself. That's pretty much defines everything if you look at it. As a matter of fact, as most of you know who study the Bible and are Christian, and this is in other religions as well, even Jesus said that you love your neighbor as yourself. The two great commandments are love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, might, mind, strength, and the second is like unto it, love thy neighbor as thyself. Upon these two rest all the law and the prophets. And that's true. Man is the one that tries to make it complicated. And unfortunately, the evil side uses law and color of law to actually commit evil, as most of you should know by now. So, like I say, this is a very difficult presentation this morning. Let me get on with a couple of other things that I think are important. As I've said for a long time, and we're seeing it more and more, and other people are starting to talk about it. I've heard Dan Bongino talk about it. I've heard Tucker Carlson talk about it. Even Sean Hannity, other people, I could name a whole list. I've been saying this for a number of years now, that there is an unbridgeable gulf between the leftist Marxists' evil side and those who support personal liberty and the constitutional republic, as imperfect as the constitutional republic is. The concept of liberty is not, especially the perfect law of liberty. Liberty means freedom with responsibility. Okay, that's really what it means. And lawyers and those who are evil always try to twist things to get power over you, and that's exactly what's occurred. We could talk about, what happened after the Revolutionary War, how the British actually kept a hold of us, the War of 1812, the Civil War, and what happened then, the 1879, I believe it was, incorporation of the United States, the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, on and on and on. And unfortunately, the people that are, it's inevitable that institutions of men will degrade to their lowest common denominator. And we're seeing that. And as I've warned for many years, the intelligence community is our most dangerous domestic enemy. The Mormons have a concept in the Book of Mormon and in their other scriptures, and I know most of you don't want to hear this, but it's evident in the Bible as well. But I'm bringing it up about the Mormons because it's so crystal clear there. It talks about, in these different sacred writings, of a conspiracy in the last days, a secret combination, that if the people don't become aware of it and stop it, that it will be their destruction. Now, the Mormons are very close to the federal government and government in general, so they don't want to point to the obvious. Okay, these secret combinations are the intelligence agencies that are backed today by the banking system, and as a matter of fact, were created by the banking systems to protect their interests, and of course the elite. But let's try to be a little specific. So, even in the great state of Utah, and in the Intermountain West here, the Mormons are taught not to look at their governments the way their Holy Writ tells them to. And unfortunately, their leaders tell them that the people that are these secret combinations and conspiracies are the tobacco companies and those that make alcohol and that kind of stuff, which are bad, no doubt, depending upon how they're used, of course. But that's not what their Holy Writ is talking about. And I'm sorry I'm spending some time on this, but I'm trying to show you how people are blinded by the leaders. Like it says there, they have not rejected me, they have rejected, or they have not rejected you, they have rejected me, when you try to tell people this stuff. However Mormons look at the Book of Mormon, and I have very dear friends that are Mormon or Mormon related. I was one myself, as you know. As a matter of fact, I just visited with Brand Thornton here the other day, and he's very much into LDS Scripture. As most of you know, we did a thing on the corruption of the FBI and the DOJ together, if you watched that. Brand is very well versed in LDS Scripture. Well, I took it another step, and I realized that Joseph Smith was in fact involved in the Masonic movement. Most people don't like to admit that, but he was. And what's important about that is that I think he broke from it. At least from, very similar to the Revolutionary War. The Revolutionary War was partly because of a rift and combat between the York and the Scottish Rite Masons. York Rite and Scottish Rite Masons. And I don't want to get into the particulars, but basically in that era, and if you read the materials from that time, like, for instance, from Albert Pike, you'll find that all that has transpired was planned. It was a playbook. And a lot of it, as I've said many, many times, and you've heard Alex Jones say it and others, that the evil side takes the Bible as their op order, their operations plan, turning it into an op order. That's military jargon, of course, just as much as the good side does. But the evil side is much more efficient at it because that's what they do. They plan to do evil, where good doesn't usually plan to do good. You just either do it or you don't. But at any rate, so in this era that Joseph Smith grew up in, he was exposed to these plans, this information. And whether you want to believe the Book of Mormon was sacred scripture passed down from Moroni and Mormon and all of that, and then the expansion on those issues in the D&C and the Pearl of Great Price, which are their other sacred scriptures, doesn't really matter. What matters here is what it taught, and whether you think it was prophetic writing about the past, historical and scriptural, like the Bible. What it really is, when you come down to it, is basically the same thing that A Brave New World was telling us. Okay? That's really what it was. Joseph Smith was basically laying out the battle plan of the evil side of this secret combination movement. And it's all there. And if you look at those writings in that light, you'll see it. And I don't want to get into it too deep, but what I'm saying is that just as Albert Pike predicted these things and Aldous Huxley and et cetera, and how it would come about, Joseph Smith in his way was doing the same thing. He was giving us a warning. I'm not preaching Joseph Smith. I'm telling you where he got his information. Okay? So this has been going on for a long time, and the battle plan was laid out, and we've fallen asleep. Even now, with as much as the independent movement, the libertarian movement, the liberty movement, the MAGA movement, and all that has tried to move ahead, the fact of the matter is we're still crippled. And I fear about what I'm going to hear in the State of the Union address tonight, and that's the reason why I've come on, because of that concern. So what I'm saying is, with all of that background, is that this leftist Marxist demonology will never reconcile with the perfect law of liberty and the constitutional republic. It will never happen again, ever. That rift, that divide has occurred, and it's going to continue to separate. And those of us who refuse to see it and to warn against it and about its end result are doing our countrymen and our fellow men and women and children a disservice. Again, why I've said everything I have here. So I'm not going to sugarcoat this. What you're going to hear, apparently, in the State of the Union tonight is a message of unity. Yeah, he's going to talk about the wall and immigration and some other things. But Trump's message is going to primarily be unity, that how great our country is. And I'm not saying that the constitutional republic isn't great. It's just that it's not operating in any way, shape, or form. We're not being represented as a people in our halls of government. Government has become an entity unto itself. It forgets that in the Constitution it was we the people in order to form a more perfect union, right? Well, it's gone way past that now, and they've usurped that and even entered into foreign treaties contrary to the Constitution, including those in the UN, and I don't want to get into a big deal about that. But the fact of the matter is that President Trump, as a leader of a state, of a government, be it the incorporated government in D.C., which many of you know about, or that poses as the constitutional republic of the United States, and it isn't, but regardless, it's evil, and Marbury versus Madison basically annuls that, voids all of that, but you have to have people that are willing to stand up and stop it. And I think Trump, he was on that track. But as a head of state, because of the interests of the state, unity amongst the people is what the state wants, even though you have people like Hillary Clinton and Soros and those who will divide and conquer, because that's what they do. But the state prefers to have everybody comply. And it's kind of a dichotomy right now because the destruction of the United States by these evil forces like Soros and Clinton, etc., the IC, the intelligence community, trying to make this one world government, everything subject to their control, population control, and all those things. The state still has to get compliance from its people. So they'll preach unity, even if in the background they're not doing that. Do you see what I'm saying? And so we're going to hear that tonight. And frankly, and I'm just going to say it, it's contrary to principle. Cultural diversity has never worked in history, ever. If in ancient times you went to a foreign land, you needed to adopt to their mores, their system of things. Even the Jews, when they went to Babylon, they did that. Of course, they were forced there, which was kind of a different idea. And I shouldn't even say Jews because it was actually 3 tribes. But at any rate, that's historical, and I'll just say the Jews. They ended up separating themselves from it, of course, because of the Persian king that many people considered Trump to be the modern-day version of, right? And that's Cyrus of Persia, or another name, his real name would be Koresh in Hebrew. But regardless, in the past, if you didn't assimilate into the country you went to, you were considered an invader and would be summarily dealt with. And there's a good reason for that, and that is because, frankly, while diversity can be enriching if it's done in the right way, when it's done as an invasive situation, as we have seen around the world today, in Europe with the migrants there, and in the U.S. That's happening now, when you force that diversity and then force the people in the country that you're trying to change, which Obama said, he wanted to have this transformation, a fundamental transformation. What you do is you cause strife. Now, is that good or bad? Well, first of all, do you invite somebody into your house and then allow them to violate your household rules? No. The idea is that they will respect you and do what you do. And we can talk about who owned the land 200, 300 years ago. I mean, those become absurd arguments on a number of levels, which I'm not going to go into today, but those are absurd, okay? You deal with the world as you find it, which is an interesting statement because, of course, what we're seeing now is this diverse cultural enrichment situation actually tearing our country apart. So what do? We have to react to that and demand that if people want access to our neighborhoods, to our country, that they have to assimilate. They can keep their cultures, they whatever it is, their meals, their whatever, but you need to speak the language. You need to respect that country that you have adopted, that has adopted you. And of course, that's not the way things are going. So, and it even goes further than that. We're now required to give give them more respect than regular folks. And what I'm talking about is this whole transgender thing, and all of that, which is contrary to biology, DNA, and everything. And of course, the elites are trying to attack our basic biology, the relationship between men and women, and this goes very deep, and I'm not here to talk about that today, but it goes into the whole thing with stratospheric aerosol injection and nanoparticles and the vaccines and the 5G and all of that. And unfortunately, I don't think Trump is going to address any of those issues the way they need to be. First of all, because this is going to be, this statement that he makes today is going to be controlled by the office of the presidency, not him. And that's a sad situation because we thought that we could get out of it with him there. Well, I'm not saying he isn't trying, but this is where things are going to get very, very dicey. This last situation, as you all know, with Governor Northam, we know about the abortion of basically a newborn, crowning. At any rate, and they're talking about up to 3 months old, right? They're even talking about it. Now, this happened in Florida. I remember an attorney and a politician talking about this whole thing in Florida like 3, 4, 5 years ago. And everybody's like, well, I'll never go anywhere. Look how bad they are. Well, look what's happened now. You have California, you have Virginia and New York at a minimum that are going along with what basically is infanticide, okay? And Virginia's effort to go there was put down by the state legislature. It did not pass, but that doesn't mean that it won't come up again. But that doesn't even matter. What matters is that we have been so controlled by this diverse culture mentality, this politically correct mentality, that we don't see and stand against true evil when it looks us right in the face. What am I talking about? Governor Northam, came out with that statement about how they're going to keep the infant comfortable until they decide if they're going to, slice its throat or not, right? Metaphorically speaking, but kill it, basically, is what that was all about. A horrendous concept. Do you realize ancient satanic cultures, and that brings in all sides of it, whether it's Moloch or Baphomet or whatever you want to say, all of those practice child killing, and it's horrific. Obviously, any kind of human sacrifice is, no matter what. But these things were pushed by those societies, and to see it rearing its ugly head in what's supposed to be the bastion of liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in the world, the leader of the free world, we're not, but to see it rear its ugly head here should tell us that we are under a major assault by evil. It's not just a difference in ideology. It is, in fact, an unbridgeable gulf between good and evil. That's exactly what it is. So this Governor Northam said that, and then people started, some people got upset about it, not enough. But because the true nature of the entire abortion process and the selling of baby parts and human parts, organ harvesting, eugenics, all of that was coming to the fore again because of his statement. And it was interesting, most people didn't realize these things were happening in California and New York and Virginia until his statement came out. Some have talked about it, but not much. But as soon as that came out, what did they do? I don't know who found the photograph of Northam dressed up as Michael Jackson or the Ku Klux Klan member. I don't know who found that. I've heard different stories, and I've watched it, but I'm still not sure who actually came out with it. But notice that that because of our PC mentality, our cultural diversity mentality that we have been forced into, not even recognize that we have a right to be what we are and to have our own opinions and to live what we are, no matter who you are, right? We have to accept this PC culture that actually is against biology and all of that. But more, we concern ourselves more with costumes than we do with the life of an infant. Do you see how they changed that? It went from infanticide, and I'm not saying they're not still talking about it, but what superseded it? This thing where Northam dressed up either as Michael Jackson or as the Ku Klux Klan. I'm not saying that was a good thing for him to do. What I'm saying is that it was an effective way of changing the subject. What is more evil? Back in the era where he dressed up like that, they were still dressing up in Halloween costumes, right? And I'm not saying dressing up as a Ku Klux Klan guy is a good thing, but by the same token, apparently, okay, we're talking about a Halloween. I'm not even saying it was that type of a thing, but it's a costume party. Right or wrong, that's what it was. Would I do it? No. I know people who have dressed up as other things, and now PC-wise, it's wrong to dress up as an American Indian if you're white or whatever. And all this is being taught to us to numb our sense of right and wrong. I saw Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, who I have a great amount of respect for. You know who he is, I think. On Twitter the other day, he put out how disgusted he was and how he felt violated, I forget his exact terms, that he saw Northam dressed up with his blackface. No mention of the infanticide. You see how that took the forefront. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at a point now where if we don't turn around, no matter what we do, all of this that we have tried to do for ourselves, our posterity, and in respect of our ancestors, is going to disappear. Roe versus Wade was evil, but it was just the first step. Do you see that now? And eventually, with the way they're talking about it, it will come down to where they can kill their newborns up to the age of 3 months. Then it'll go to 6 months. Then it'll go to a year. And I've heard as high as 3 years, maybe more. If they don't have any respect for infants, are they going to have any respect for men and women? No. And they've already shown that. The wars that they perpetuate, now we're going into Venezuela, you know, no matter what, they always come up with a reason. You know what? The South America, forget the first, the American states, the Association of the American States, or whatever it's called now. It's been too long since I've been gone. They can handle that. They don't need us in that. And I'm not sure it's totally the way that they're presenting it to us. But President Trump is not learning his lessons from what happened in Syria and etc. And I realize that Congress now shows how evil they are because they voted that, you know, the wars need to continue despite the will of the American people, or even if it's just right or wrong. You see, government is out of control. It is a law unto itself. It has no concept of right and wrong, even though it pretends to have that, and then they don't. So at any rate, Dan Bongino, on 12/31/2018, New Year's Eve, he said, he talks about and warns about this rift that's happening in our country. However you feel about Dan, I know there's some problems between him and Stranahan and some other things, but you know, arguments amongst people like that, you know, subject matter is not a big deal. It's where you stand on the real issues about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And basically, Dan Bongino said that, you know, we've lost our country. This is a quote: "We have entirely lost control of our government. Soft secession is coming." And I'm not so sure that's going to be a bad thing now, because you can't stop this division. You can't stop it. There will be states like California, New York, Illinois, etc., that will want to go the way of leftist Marxism and demonocracy, which is actually the root word for democracy, believe it or not. There'll be some people who disagree with that in the Greek, but at any rate, the hordes are never right. You know, the Earl of Marlborough, I think was who he was. He said, "I do not believe in the collective wisdom of individual ignorance." It's true. It's true. Which is why, in their great wisdom, the founding fathers, you know, basically formed the Senate as opposed to the House of Representatives. But that's another issue altogether for right now. The point is that there are those who see that this rift is here and that there is no way to repair it. So Trump going tonight and saying that we are a great country and we have all this unity and all this, the division is going to get worse and worse and worse. It's not going to get better. And Trump has to realize, and maybe he does, and the office of the executive, the office of the presidency that tries to control, and the IC, etc., that try to control the elected president, he's going to have to come clean. And that's a dangerous thing to do. Will he? I don't know. Don't misunderstand me. I support President Trump across the board on most issues. I'm very disappointed. I don't understand the financial part. I put out a thing on Twitter the other day that came on Zero Hedge that was very good. and some other things about what he's done so much for the economy, etc. They had a picture of a little circle. It was like this big, okay, and then they have this big giant circle. They said, "This is what Trump is doing. And this is what the media reports on." And that's very true. I realize that. As we all know, the press, the mainstream media, is run by the intelligence community, and they are propagandizing America. They are trying to alter our understandings of things and remove our liberty from us. They are trying to do that, take control, if you will. And it's across the board, and we've talked about that before. So I'm very troubled, though, that Trump has, and I've talked about it before, I keep saying that. I'm very troubled that Trump has a position that he does on, and it's very clear that he does, on the First Amendment, that he has not fought for it. He has not. The Second Amendment, he's actually fought against it. He has given the opposition, the dividers in our country, the chance to go forward with the red flag laws, because he said he was for taking the guns first and then due process. The bump stock ban, when in fact those of us who have researched the Las Vegas shooting down to a minute detail know that the FBI report is not only incomplete, it is a lie, as is the Las Vegas Police Department report. There were automatic weapons involved. I doubt that there was a bump stock involved, even though it was found in the room. That was a method to start to go after bits and pieces of the Second Amendment. Next will be magazines, as I said, high-capacity magazines. It's around the corner. So there have been, and then on the Fourth Amendment, he's been lax on that. He's allowed his DOJ. He has the responsibility to rein in his DOJ, and I realize the position they put him in. But he has allowed his DOJ to violate people's Fourth Amendment rights. Roger Stone. Civil asset forfeiture. He needs to at least make public statements that he's going to change these things, even if in reality he finds himself boxed in and unable to carry it out. He needs to at least forcefully discuss these issues and tell the American people how much danger they're in and that he's trying to fix it. He's willing to say the MSM is fake news, but he won't go to the next step and say his IC is responsible for that. And Soros and Clinton, et cetera, et cetera. He won't go there. And that's a mistake. Again, it's this unity idea, which President Trump, they are not rejecting you. They are rejecting God. You just need to make the stand and make it strong. You don't need to compromise. This isn't politics anymore, as I've said for a long time. You're not in a political battle. You're in a war. You are in a war. And the lives and well-being of millions of Americans, men, women, and children, and possibly billions worldwide, really are dependent upon how you are willing to take up the standard of liberty and protect it. And if you fail to do so, destruction is around the corner, because the evil is overcoming us. It's being allowed to usurp every aspect of our lives. You wanted the job. You promised, at least it appeared, that you promised God that you had the right intent, and you promised us, the American people. You can't violate that contract without severe consequences. Cause and effect, God, whatever you want to call it. Talking about the First Amendment, in the Communications Act of 1996, I believe it is, I've heard this talked about. I haven't read it myself, but it goes to this First Amendment thing that somebody needs to go after, and actually, private citizens are. The attorney, Mr. Barnes, who is helping out the kids from the Catholic school that got framed in D.C. by the leftists, by the mainstream media, etc. Mr. Barnes is representing them, as are some other attorneys, and they are suing people who have maliciously said things about those kids and framed them in the situation that they did. Remember the Catholic school where the Native American Nathan, whatever his name is, comes up and actually approaches the kids. The kids didn't surround him. It was all set up. And then lies were said about those children. And the mainstream media that's so concerned about our children that we need to take the guns away didn't protect the children, did they? And they never really, really will. They never really will. That's just, every tyrant uses children as a reason to take control. Always. But at any rate, so there are private attorneys that are going after these people like Kathy Griffin and CBS, et cetera, that maligned these kids, and rightly so. But where is the DOJ? And I brought this up in a live stream the other day. Where is the DOJ protecting the rights of these kids? Where is the DOJ in protecting the rights of the citizens to their First Amendment? Where is the DOJ in protecting the rights of the people in their Second Amendment? Remember I said the other day, President Eisenhower and President Kennedy, they sent military to federal officers to ensure, and federal military, National Guard and even feds, to these states that were denying blacks their rights. The first initial step is to get the DOJ involved and try to get the states to recognize First Amendment and Second Amendment rights, Fourth Amendment rights, all that. That's what the DOJ is about. But no, it's become assist in attacking the little person, as we see, and what they've done to Trump and to those that have supported him. That's what our IC, our law enforcement agencies, have become, tools of the evil side. I'm not saying they don't do some good, but the evil that they're promulgating now is starting to outweigh the good that they do. And again, I can say that. I was one of them. I can see what's happening. Former Assistant Director James Kallstrom is very upset about what he sees, and he's been outspoken about it. Okay, he had an issue with a thing that happened back when he was on where he bent the truth a little bit, and I think he regretted it. It was about the TWA disaster. And I think he regrets that, and he's come back strong to say that we've got a problem in the FBI and the DOJ, and it needs to be fixed. So President Trump needs to talk about what tonight? He needs to talk about Section 230 that he can use to go after Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, CBS, CNN, et cetera. They have a responsibility, and they use these mainstream media platforms. They use that information to come after people like Alex Jones and myself, et cetera. I'm a little bird, but you see the principle. And yet they do not hold themselves to the same standards. Where's the DOJ in that? Trump needs to take command. How he's going to do it? He wanted the job. He needs to figure out a way to do it. But the way he's been approaching it isn't working. Hiring neocons, deep state people into his administration with nobody else that supported him, very good supporters that know a hell of a lot, he's ignored. Why? My Republican insider says, well, it's because he's a lone guy. He didn't really have the contacts that he needed to do this and all that. Well, then maybe he shouldn't have run for president, right? If he's not willing to step outside the box that D.C. tries to put him in, then maybe he's the wrong guy for the job. Who is? I don't think Rand Paul had the leadership persona for it. I'm not saying he isn't a good man and he isn't strong. But we needed a fighter like Trump. We needed a guy, as I heard, who was that said this the other day? I can't remember, but I think it was Dan Bongino who said, Trump is the kind of guy you'll want in a foxhole with you because he's going to get down in the dirty and fight, right? And I agree with that. But sometimes I don't know if he really understands who the enemy is. Sometimes I don't know if he understands what his fire lane is, what direction the enemy is coming from. That's troubling, because it's mostly from inside his administration. People say, well, he's bringing these people in there to identify who the bad people are. Really? Really? This far down, this far along in his presidency, he needs to do that? Bill Barr. We're going to see where that goes. I don't have a lot of faith in it. So what am I saying? Folks, the evil is so utterly strong that you have to be willing to stand on your own bottom. What does that mean? There was a 18th century, 19th century guy who said that there will come a day when every person will have to be like a tub standing on its own bottom. You can hold a lot of water, but you have to be wide. You have to have a breadth about you so that you can be prepared. That's what that means. Intellectually, spiritually, physically, materially, food, shelter, protection, all of those things. And I'm not sure that we're doing that. I'm gonna break here because it kind of, before I get to the next subject, which is going to be about the layoffs and the MSM that you've heard about and why that's happened. So I started talking about the Second Amendment, right, and the importance of the Bill of Rights. What I'm going to say now has nothing to do with trying to stand up against our own military, our police, our government, or anything like that. Okay? If we can't find competent constitutional authority to ally ourselves with, then we're in trouble. There are, like in Washington State, where these draconian gun laws just went into effect, the red flag type laws, there are about 3/4 of the sheriffs in Washington State that say that they will refuse to enforce that law because that law is unconstitutional. They took a brave stand, and Trump needs to do the same thing on the national level. I understand there are some sheriffs in Oregon that have done the same, and there are some in Utah and probably in other places. Judge Learned Hand said that freedom, liberty abides in the hearts of men and women, that no paper, no court, no constitution can save it if it isn't in the hearts of men and women. If you don't know who Judge Learned Hand is, look that up. I've quoted him before. So what do we need to do to make a statement? We have to talk like we are here. We have to exercise our First Amendment rights. Remember, God spoke, and this happened, and God spoke, and that happened. The speaking is what's important. The censoring of speech is devilish. So we need to exercise our First Amendment. We need to complain when our Fourth Amendment rights are violated. Trump needs to tell the DOJ to stop this civil asset forfeiture program. And many of the other things, like the way they went after Roger Stone. That's the police state now, what they did to Roger Stone. They really, I don't know, they do things and, at that level of government, and it's usually planned out. They know what's going to happen. I'm not really sure where they were going with that, but for one thing that is for sure, it shows you how far our law enforcement has gone off the deep end. So, what do we do? How do we show our support for the Second Amendment? Carry our weapons, whatever. I'm going to tell you what I think is a good idea. Again, this is no threat against anybody in the government or the military or anything like this. This is talking about the Second Amendment, the right of the people to keep and bear arms. Our major concern, despite that the government is covering, Trump's trying to stop the MS-13 and those types of things. But the danger that most of us face are the roving gangs. Remember I opened up talking about the Mormon scriptures this morning. It talks in the Book of Mormon about the roving bands of what they call the Gadianton robbers. And what that is, you see it today. Okay, it's the MS-13, it's the Los Zetas, it's the Zapatistas, it's Black Lives Matter, it's La Raza. A lot of you are going to get upset when I say that, but it's just a fact. I'm not saying there aren't white supremacy groups that are dangerous as well, but I'm also very strongly saying that I'm not for cultural diversity in that we allow other cultures to overtake what America is. Okay? You can come in and you can practice your cultural diversity, but don't force it on the rest of America. You came here. Again, we could talk about the way that the land was supposedly taken and all that, but those are all, in effect, ridiculous arguments, and we can discuss that at some other time. So where am I going with this? How can we support the Second Amendment? You know that they're talking about taking all semi-automatic weapons. They'll start off by, again, like I said, with the bump stock thing. And Trump let this happen because if he doesn't know what really happened in Vegas, he needs to find out. Why? Why hasn't he insisted that, the Las Vegas thing be told to us the way it really happened? Because it's not the way we're being told. And it's made to look like, bump stocks and semi-automatic weapons are the problem. Do you see that? When that wasn't what was happening. We have helicopters involved and assault, fully automatic assault weapons. To this day, I'm still not sure there was any shooting from helicopters, but they were definitely there. Okay? Multiple shooters, no doubt about it. Matter of fact, I don't think you'll mind me showing you this. Okay, I'm gonna break from what I'm talking about here because Brand, I hope I don't get in trouble for showing this, but I think you've posted on Facebook. So let me show you a picture. For those of you who think that there were no actual people that were shot at Las Vegas. Let me see if I can find it here. This will just take me a minute. I apologize. I got to find out where I put it. That's the problem with these things. You get too much information, you're right? You can get way too much information. Oh, man. I should have had it put aside before this. Oh, I know where it is. Pardon me. I know where it is. You get my age and you know the file's there. You're just not sure where you put it. So let me bring this up. Okay. Again, I don't think he'll mind me showing you this because he put it out on Facebook. All right. I don't know if you can see that very well. You see that bullet hole? That's an exit wound. This is his nephew. All right. This is Brand's nephew who was shot at the Harvest Festival in Las Vegas. Now, the interesting about this situation, and again, I think I can talk about it, is that the angle of the entry wound and the exit wound proves that he wasn't shot from the Mandalay Bay. All right? It proves it. So there was something else going on. He basically was approached by the FBI and the LVMPD and some other folks and told not to talk about it, but the wounds speak for themselves. I just wanted to show you that real quick so that you know. Now, so where am I going with this thing with the Second Amendment? I'm not talking about violent revolution. I'm not talking about, there's no way you could fight the American military anyway. And that's really not what you want to do. You want to align yourselves with competent constitutional sheriff authority, governor authority, those types of things, okay, if they exist. And in some states they don't. Some counties they don't. But you need to search those people out and know who your allies are and who you can depend upon. But as a statement of your support for the Second Amendment and your statement to make against these people that are saying that you have no Second Amendment rights or that they're going to define what they are, that they're going to take away your magazines that have, first it'll be 10 or more, and then it'll be 5 or more, and then it'll be 1. You know how that'll go, right? It's a creep, right? It's an interval. They're going to say that, and then they're going to say, we want to take away your semi-automatic, and then it'll go to your bolt action. The only thing you can have is a single shot shotgun. And it'll be, no, you can't even have that. You see where it's going, okay? So how do we make a concerted effort as a people, both economically and politically, to make a statement against that? You have to put your money where your mouth is, okay? And what I'm going to encourage you all to do is to exercise your Second Amendment rights en masse. And I hope that you take at least this aspect of my video. You can cut it out. By the way, anybody can use any of my videos. They're all, they're not up there. They're not copyrighted. You can send them out, use bits and pieces, just as long as you don't change the message. Some people have done that, and it really got me upset. As long as you don't edit it to make me say something that I didn't say, or the principle that I'm trying to explain. As long as you're not trying to do those things, change those, you can use them like you like. So take this bit here if you like. You need to put your money where your mouth is, and tell these leftist Marxists and even the rhinos, right, that not only do you stand for the Second Amendment, but you are going to exercise that right. A right is a responsibility, and I've talked about this before. It's not just a gift, it's a responsibility, because if you have a right, that means that you are willing to take it and have an ability to respond. Responsibility. That's what it means. You can't do it unless you own a firearm. So, I can't make that statement and not put my money where my mouth is. So again, what I'm saying is, if you do not have a firearm, it is time for you, especially a semi-automatic firearm, be it handgun, shotgun, or rifle, you need to take that economic, political statement and put it into reality and purchase one, even if you have to borrow the money. Borrow the money, that's against everything, right? I'm telling you, that's how important it is. Now, Obama, because of what he did, he was the greatest salesman for weapons in the history of the United States, because everybody knew he was going to try to take away the guns, right? And he didn't succeed in that. But he has been funding elements both in and out of the government to make sure that happens eventually, okay? And we're going to talk about that here again in a minute. Trump has made some statements and has done some things that are contrary to the Second Amendment. We need to send him a message. So with all of the threats that are being made about taking semi-automatic weapons, I imagine that gun sales have probably gone up again. Don't sit idly by. If you have a few $100s aside, if you have any means at all to go out and to purchase a semi-automatic rifle, do so. And I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, okay? Having been in the military for 28 odd years and the police for several years, I never wanted to ever have another military style weapon, ever. I just didn't want it. However, due to the fact that I believe that this political statement has to be made, and has to be made en masse, they have to be shown that they're not going to be able to confiscate or ban these weapons because Americans are buying them in the droves. And then you need to make agreements with your local sheriff, if they're constitutional, and your governor, on how to defend these rights. But the first step is to exercise the right and to make sure that you own one. I heard Roger Stone say when he was rated that he's for the Second Amendment, but he's never owned a gun. Well, then he's not for the Second Amendment the way he needs to be. I'm not saying he's bad for doing that, but you can't have a right that you don't exercise, because it's a responsibility, your ability to respond. So I'm going to ask everybody today to make a commitment and to send this out, to make a commitment to show that the American people are adamant that these threats to take away the weapons, okay, is unacceptable, and that we're making a political statement in support of the Second Amendment with our pocketbooks. So I went out and I got one. AR-15. Like I said, I carried one of these things for years. And I never really ever wanted to even, I don't even like looking at them. Okay? So I bought this as a political statement. I put my money where my mouth is. It's a little more than I wanted to spend, right? But we have to make a statement. And we have to tell these demons, both in the government and out of the government, that we won't stand for it, that we're going to vote, not just at the ballot box, but with our pocketbooks, with our cash, with our buying power, and say, not only are you not going to ban these weapons, but we're going to get them in mass. And you can go the next step and say Molin Labe if you want. This isn't the time or the place for that. I'm just telling you, to exercise a right, you must take responsibility. You must obtain this or something like it, so that you are exercising that right, so that you can respond as necessary, your responsibility. And that's the first step in securing your rights, is to exercise them. So again, I made this commitment, like I said, it's the last thing I wanted. I mean, literally, it's the last thing I wanted. But we need to make this political statement now, today, not tomorrow, today. Economically, this will say a lot. The numbers will say a lot. And they have in the past few years, they have. But we need to get more serious about it. And we need it to be something like this, okay? The thing that they're trying to get rid of. And I know that this has been used for evil. It's been used for good, too. Every tool can be used for good or evil. The tool shouldn't be banned. The criminal should be dealt with. So go out and get one for you today. Learn how to use it, take classes. Of course, I went through many, many years on how to use these. I'm very well trained. I'll just leave it at that. I'm very well trained. And, treat it safely, understand the concept of firearm safety, but become proficient with it as well. That's necessary. But the first step is to have one, is to have it, to spend the money, to make the political statement with your dollars that you support your right and the right of your neighbor to exercise the Second Amendment. Do it today. Like I said, I already made that commitment. All right. Okay, last subject, and then I'm going to go. We'll take a couple of questions. You've probably heard on Alex Jones and some others that, of course, I've talked about it for a long time, the NDAA, and it was an extension of Operation Mockingbird. They had Operation Mockingbird, and then in the 70s, the Congress came down on the IC and basically had the Smith-Mundt Act, which made it illegal for them to use propaganda against Americans, and then that was repealed under Obama under the NDAA, and they've been propagandizing us since. And then the Congress even went further and funded those in the next NDAA, and a lot of this is run out of the DOD and other places, but DOD apparently very much so, with money that Obama had put aside and gave to these agencies, which apparently ran out this last week or so. It was only funded for 2 years. That's not saying that there aren't black shadow government ops going on funding these programs as well. I'm sure Obama and his shadow government has other methods of getting it. I mean, look at the drug trade, right? Which is really what all those guys are on. It's an insurgency in Mexico caused by our own government. I've talked about that before, that the drug war is just a cover for the insurgency to control the Mexican government. But at any rate, there's a big layoff of a lot of these mainstream media, BuzzFeed in particular, but there have been others, many, many people laid off, and all this sad stuff, it's economics. No, this was the money running out from the Obama shadow government that was fighting against Trump, and the people that engaged in that should be collared, okay? But that shows you how insidious this whole thing is. And if you want to find out more about it, go to Alex Jones' site Infowars, for instance. And some other people talked about it. Bill Still has as well, about this layoff of the MSM and why it's really happened. But they deserve it anyway. But it's interesting to me that I have some. I'm going to try to be kind of careful here. We don't want to anger those that we love, right? Sometimes you just got to stand up and say. But I have some family members, I'll just kind of say it that way, who have worked inside the federal government and were just in the layer underneath the SES. Most of you should know what the Senior Executive Service is. So these people in my family have worked at the federal government level just underneath the SES, almost to SES, okay? They were actually just about ready to move to that level. And all they indoctrinate themselves with 24/7 was CNN, MSNBC, the other mainstream media, and believe that when they access stories from those Mockingbird funded, directed agencies, that they're getting their research done. And of course they're not. And it became very uncomfortable. It has been very uncomfortable for me to try to show them that that's not research. And having the educational level and the experience level that they had, they should know better. But sometimes, you can't serve two masters. And if you're in the federal government, have been in the federal government, or depend upon the federal government for your pension, where are your loyalties going to be? It might just be that simple. But the fact of the matter is that these people have refused to understand, not just that they couldn't, but they have refused to understand the danger we're in and the real problem, and instead call people like me, alarmists, conspiracy theorists, or whatever. And they really don't know the facts. They really don't. So what's going to happen? I don't know. I hope the goodness in them eventually shows them that they're going down the wrong road. They're going down the support, even if they aren't that. They're going down the road of supporting the leftist Marxist destruction of America. Hating President Trump because all they listen to is the MSM all day. They don't know the other side of the story. They don't want to know it. And when I show it to them, they might accept that little tiny little specific example, but they won't expand their thinking and see how that impacts everything else. They'll say, well, that's the only case, when it isn't. So we're in trouble. We've got a main big problem here. And I'm afraid, as I said, that with the degeneracy that's happening with our people, not just the drugs, which again was a method of insurgency in Mexico. The poppy fields are stronger now than they've ever been since the U.S. has been in Afghanistan. That's what they're there for. If you don't know that, you need to understand it. This is a war. It's not politics anymore, and they're using a lot of weapons against us. And Mexico has been taken over. The former president of Mexico, came out, did receive kickbacks from the drug cartels, as did Hillary and as did others. What was Fast and Furious really about? I was down there during that. If you remember, you go back and look at my documentary. What it is, it's supplying weapons to the insurgency. It wasn't to find out who the drug lords are unless they were, competition to the CIA and the DEA. No, it was fueling an insurgency. And they're killing mayors. All the signs of an insurgency are there. It's not just a drug war, ladies and gentlemen. And it's being fueled by our government. It's an insurgency in Mexico, fueled and encouraged by our government, with the bottom line of this invasion that's now happening and the deterioration of our American values, whatever they are. I'll tell you what they are. They are, if nothing else, the Bill of Rights and the right of men and women to associate with each other and have children and happiness and all of that. So anyway, there are people in my own family that can't see it no matter what. And when I show them to it, they want to argue. They will not see the awful situation that they and we are in. And it's very, very discouraging. Okay. I'll look at the chat real quick. I don't want to take much more time because I know that there are other things that are coming up. Talking about that tree climbing, Smith & Wesson MPAR 15 MMP military and police is reasonable. Yeah, I think you can get those for $500. Just because they're using an AR-15 platform, there are different grades of quality. And you need to research that for yourself. But, you're really not going to go to war with the thing. That's not the issue here. That's not what we're talking about. So you don't need to have a weapon that's going to be able to fire 50,000 rounds without burning the barrel up or, breaking an internal part or whatever. It's the point of making the statement. That's what's important. So yeah, a Smith & Wesson M&P would be fine to make that statement. Just don't think that you're going to get 50,000 rounds through it, because you're not. Okay, there are differences in the way the barrels are made, the type of steel, whether they're chromed or not. There's a lot of issues there. The important thing is to spend the money that you can and get something to make the statement. That's what's. Yeah, you can build your own, for instance. Yeah, that's a very good idea. So study all that. But what I'm saying right now is that we need to make this happen today, within the next few days. It needs to be a surge of purchases with people voting with their dollars. That no, you're not going to ban semi-automatic weapons or large capacity magazines, and you're sure as hell not going to confiscate them. Okay, that's the message that you need to be sending, and that's the best way to do it in my estimation at this time. But then be responsible and go the next step and learn how to use it. You don't want to be having it go off by accident. I mean, well-trained people have accidents. I have a police officer friend who got an AR-15. An AK-47. Semi-auto was all it was. He was in his house and he let his guard down. He knows to keep the muzzle pointed in a safe direction, but he still had an unintended discharge, and it went through the ceiling, out through the roof of his house. So even well-trained people can have problems. So that's why when you have something like this, you always check. You always keep the barrel, the bore, you always keep the barrel pointed in a safe direction, and you double check 3 times whether it's loaded or not. That's what you see here in this. This is a plug here to show that there's nothing in the chamber, okay? So that I know that it's not loaded, okay? Now, if that wasn't in there, let me just show you this so you know real quick. If that wasn't in there, okay, and it was closed like that, and there's no magazine in there could still be a round in the chamber. So you got to keep it pointed in a safe direction. So you always check the chamber. And this one, you look in there, you put your finger in there, you make sure there's nothing there. Okay, you've seen me do that when I was out with my 4570. Well, it's the same with these. Okay, it's the same thing. So you have to be very, very cautious as to where this thing is and what's in it. So have the time and the money and the commitment to learn how to use your weapon. Don't just buy one and then not go the next step and learn how to operate it safely. Okay. So there we go with the plug again, all right, let's see. Sorry about that. I probably made a loud noise on there. Okay. And we're just seeing if there are any other questions here. I know I bounced around a little bit today, but I'm not real happy with the NRA right now. I never have been. Back in the 70s, when I was still in high school, or maybe I was just out of high school, I got very upset at the NRA because they kept talking about the Second Amendment being for hunting rights. And I knew as a high school student that that's not what the Second Amendment was about. And I wrote the NRA, and I said, why are you talking about hunting rights? That's not what this is about. So the NRA has been shooting us in the ass, in the foot for a long time. I'm not real happy with the NRA. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying that they've tried to take some kind of a political middle road to avoid difficulty. And it's unfortunate because that's why so many bad things have happened, is they've compromised on so many things. The bump stocks is one. The NRA went along with the bump stock ban. What are they thinking? Especially when they should know, if nobody else, that a bump stock isn't the only thing that will help you fire in a manner like that. You can use a belt loop on your pants, which is why I say they're going to eventually go after the semi-automatics, okay? This is just to start it up. Let me see what else is here. I'm not going to get into any more religious information here. Yeah, a slingshot killed a giant. Watchwoman on the Wall, 2015. She's saying, and it's a very good point. It's a very good point. But you understand, a government buying a slingshot isn't going to make the political statement that needs to be made right now. That's the point. I love slingshots. I've used them. I've used crossbow pistols, archery, lots of other things. So I understand what you're saying, but we need to make a political statement now. Okay, that's the point of all of this. Whether you may hate guns, okay, learn to use the tool. You may hate screwdrivers, but someday you're going to have to use a screwdriver. Learn how to use it. Have it. Take the right precautions. With a screwdriver, you don't keep your hand in the way when you're pushing on something and stab yourself. I mean, any tool can hurt you if you don't use it right. Okay, if you don't take the time to learn it. Let me see if there's anything here. Finest Planet One says, now you need a Craig Sawyer sight for the top of that pea shooter. About the only thing I'm going to do to this is I will get probably a red dot sight or a red dot scope. My eyes are getting worse. Obviously that's happening. I even have my reading glasses here in case I can't read my notes or see this, because they'll change a little bit here and there. So, Brand Thornton's on here and he says, cool. You're at fault of this, Brand. It's from our discussion about all this. So anyway, that's about the only thing I'll do to this. I'm not into dressing things. Again, I'm not expecting... I didn't get this, and I don't expect you to get it with the idea that you're going to go out and take back the country. That's not it, in a forceful manner. It's to make a political statement. I'm really, really serious about that, okay? I'm really serious about that. Cover up that yellow. No, the yellow's in there. See? Who's this saying this? Rob Carpenter? This yellow is to show, this is a safety thing to show you that those chambers empty. Of course, I don't have that in there when I'm out, shooting it or whatever. No. Safety. It's not on this end either, okay? All right. Big difference. Okay, let's see if there's anything else. Again, the yellow part is a plug I put into the chamber so that I know that it's to show that the chamber does not have a round in it. It's a safety mechanism. You can also, when it's not loaded, when you're storing it or whatever you're doing with it, you can put a lock through it so that the bolt doesn't close all the way, and the lock shows you that the weapon's unloaded. Yeah, I worry more about Antifa and that kind of a group than I do even the government. The red flag laws and the SWAT teams that are being used to steal people's rights and property are wrong, but you don't want to get in a shooting fight with those guys. If they want them, they come. I'm not telling you to do that. Again, I'm telling you to make a political statement. If thousands, millions of people go out and buy one of these in the next couple of days, do you realize the political statement that will make? It might put you down a few $100. It might put you in debt, but sometimes a debt is worth it when so much is on the line. Yeah, for those of you in places like California where there are already restrictive gun measures involved, I'm not telling you to violate your local laws. Okay, I'm not telling you to do that. I do have a friend in California who is in the process of purchasing an AR-15. He has to go through some type of a training thing and a registration or whatever, and he can't have more than a 5-round magazine. But he's purchasing the weapon. He's taking the steps to purchase the weapon. Don't do it illegally, even though technically what they're doing to you is a violation of the Constitution. The DOJ, like I said earlier, under Trump should come in there and say you're violating the rights of the residents of your state. Cease and desist, or we're going to come after you. That's what Trump should be doing, not encouraging red flag laws and bump stock laws. He's got it all reversed there, and it does make me very angry because it's like he doesn't really understand the concept. He doesn't understand the principle. I'm really worried about this SOTU tonight. You may see me tomorrow morning as well. Okay. All right. Okay, I don't see any particular questions here. I guess, interestingly enough, the AR-15 discussion took the discussion, I guess, pretty much. Yeah, I'll make this statement. Stephen Turner says ARs can run from about $400 and up into the thousands. You get what you pay for. Well, that's true. There are makes and models out there that are going to jam and all that. So yeah, get the best weapon you can afford. I'll just put it that way. Get the best weapon you can afford. If you can only afford $400, go make the statement. If you can buy a $2,000 weapon, do that. All right, but it's making the statement that's important. And even the cheap ones will shoot. They might not stand up for a long time. You might have some jams and things like that, but you're making the statement, okay? That's, again, what we're really after here. Okay. All right. I don't see any particular things here addressing any of the really important stuff that I was talking about today. I hope you understand. I see some people talking about the Mormon thing. I hope you understand that what my point with that is that Joseph Smith knew, because of his contact with the secret societies of those days, what their plans were. And he was telling us through the Book of Mormon, at the very least, that the same thing was going to happen in the United States about these secret combinations, these secret societies, that if they were not stopped, they would destroy us. Okay, and it's in the Bible as well. It talks about the same things in the Bible, but I bring up the Joseph Smith thing because that's within the last 250 years, and it shows the plan of these secret societies and how they've taken the money system and the power system and used it to our detriment and to our ultimate destruction if we don't do something. Pardon me, if we don't do something about it today. Okay, I think we're done. I want to thank everybody for coming. I didn't get through a lot of the chat today, but I talked a little bit much, but I felt like this is important. So to end, for those of you who want to see InfoWars coming up, I'm going to get off. Again, the United States is going down the wrong road, ladies and gentlemen. I don't care if Trump is in office. Look at the evil that is coming out. Now, yes, it's being identified. I agree, okay? And I'm not saying everybody in the country is bad, but the evil is being shown for what it is. That's the purpose of Trump? Okay, that's fine and dandy, but he still needs to make positive, affirmative statements opposing it at every level. Anything that opposes the First Amendment, anything that opposes the Second, anything that opposes the Fourth, really any of the Bill of Rights. Infanticide is murder. Okay? Abortion has been legalized. I'm not for it. Women will probably feel differently. Some will, some won't. The issue is it's going too far. It really went too far with Roe versus Wade. But now we see where it leads to. It's just like the whole transsexual, homosexual thing, how it's gone into pedophilia. Pedophilia is being pushed now, and it's going to get worse. The age of consent down to like 10. It's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to happen unless we start making statements like supporting the Second Amendment. These are not. When a society goes from attacking a guy for having several girlfriends You can call them wives, whatever. I call them wives because once certain things happen, that is a marriage. But regardless, you attack a guy for having, or let's say any adult for having multiple partners, which may or may not be a good thing. I'm not going to argue with that. Okay, not here. That's not the point. But when we take that and now it's, well, pedophiles. Pedophiles should be able to do it, or we should be able to kill kids, or we should tell a little boy that he's actually a little girl, or vice versa. Those things are bad, and it's going to get worse unless and our entire society is rotten from the head down. It started at the head. Not that the body hasn't had some problems in the past, but when the head rots, then follows the body, and that's exactly what's happening. And that's why I'm so hard on Trump, because I really believe we have one shot at this. Is he a panacea? Not a panacea. A placebo? Is he here to make us go to sleep so that we don't act? Well, don't let that happen. I don't believe that, but for those of you who do, don't let it happen. Get active. Do something. Okay, I'll be out of here. Thanks again for coming. I may be on Wednesday. I may be on tomorrow morning. I'm not sure. Thursday, I'm not sure. It really depends on how things go tonight. I think I've said my piece. I don't expect any grand things tonight. President Trump has to act to stop this invasion on all fronts. He has to declassify the IC crimes. He has to collar IC criminals and state criminals. He needs to do those things. And he needs to find a way to do it. Okay. Short of that, there will be no redemption. Till later.